The galaxy teetered on the brink of annihilation as the Tyranid Hive Fleets continued their relentless advance, consuming entire systems in their insatiable hunger. The Imperium of Man, vast and ancient, found itself stretched to breaking point, its innumerable forces barely able to contain the ceaseless onslaught. The Tau Empire, despite its advanced technology and united vision of the greater good, suffered similarly under the Tyranids' remorseless attacks. Yet, amidst this desperate backdrop, an unlikely and fragile alliance began to take shape, one born of necessity and survival. The initial overtures were made by the Tau. Understanding that the Tyranids represented an existential threat to all life, the ethereal caste proposed a ceasefire with the Imperium, offering technology and manpower in exchange for mutual cooperation against the Hive Fleets. This was no easy feat. Centuries of conflict and cultural differences had bred mistrust and hatred between the two factions. To the Imperium, the Tau were heretics and Xenos, abhorrent to the God Emperor's vision for humanity. Conversely, the Tau viewed the Imperium as a brutal and oppressive relic of the past. Yet, desperation has a way of bridging even the widest gulfs. It was Marneus Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines, who became the Imperium's reluctant advocate for the alliance. He recognized that the Imperium's own resources were insufficient to hold back the Tyranids indefinitely, even with the Space Marines' renowned skill and dedication. At great personal and political risk, Calgar secured the High Lords of Terra's tentative approval for joint operations with the Tau. The Emperor's Tarot, in its cryptic wisdom, hinted that this union might serve the Imperium's ultimate survival, though dissenters in the Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition viewed such collaboration as heresy of the highest order. With the foundations of the alliance laid, the practicalities of cooperation emerged as significant challenges. The Imperium's war machine was immense but inflexible, built on ancient rituals and dogma. The Tau, by contrast, relied on adaptability and efficiency, supported by a level of technological sophistication that bordered on the miraculous. Initial joint campaigns were fraught with friction. Communication breakdowns and conflicting strategies led to avoidable losses. Yet, as more battles were fought side by side, grudging respect began to grow. The Tau marveled at the determination of the Adeptus Astartes, while Imperial forces came to appreciate the Tau's meticulous planning and devastating firepower. The war against the Tyranids began to shift. In regions where the Alliance operated, Hive Fleet incursions were not merely repulsed but shattered outright. The Tau's battlesuits and railguns provided precise, devastating support for Imperial Guard regiments, while Space Marine chapters carried out surgical strikes deep within the Hive Fleet's synaptic webs. The Adeptus Mechanicus, initially scornful of Tau technology, soon found themselves intrigued by its potential. Some tech priests began integrating Tau plasma weaponry into their own designs, creating hybrid systems that were devastatingly effective against Tyranid bioconstructs. Despite these successes, the Alliance was not without its sacrifices and challenges. Tyranid adaptability meant that every victory came at a cost, as the Hive Mind learned from its defeats and spawned new horrors to counter its foes. On the human side, the Inquisition's Ordo Xenos grew increasingly restless, denouncing the Alliance as a betrayal of the Emperor's will. Radical elements within the Imperium even sought to sabotage joint operations, viewing collaboration with the Tau as a greater threat than the Tyranids themselves. Similarly, within the Tau Empire, voices of dissent began to question the wisdom of fighting alongside humans, citing the Imperium's oppressive nature as antithetical to the greater good. The turning point came during the Siege of Taros, a strategically vital mining world that the Tyranids had targeted for its rich deposits of rare minerals. Here, the combined forces of the Imperium and the Tau faced one of the largest swarms ever encountered. The defense was a grueling ordeal, testing the limits of the Alliance's cooperation. Imperial Guard regiments, supported by Tau fire warriors and their sophisticated drones, held the line for weeks, repelling wave after wave of Tyranid bioforms. Overhead, Tau mantas and Imperial Navy bombers rained destruction upon the swarming hordes, while Space Marines led daring boarding actions against Hive ships in orbit. It was a battle of attrition unlike any other. The Tyranids poured endless reinforcements into the fray, their hive ships disgorging bioforms faster than they could be destroyed. Yet, for every inch of ground they gained, the defenders exacted a heavy toll. The turning point came when a strike team composed of Ultramarines and Tau Crisis battlesuits infiltrated the heart of the primary hive ship. The two factions worked in perfect unison, the Space Marines' resilience and close combat prowess complementing the Tau's ranged precision. Together, they succeeded in destroying the hive ship's synaptic core, severing its connection to the hive mind and throwing the swarm into disarray. The victory at Taros became a symbol of what the Imperium and the Tau could achieve together. News of the battle spread across both empires, inspiring hope and further solidifying the alliance. For the first time, there was a sense that the Tyranid threat could be contained, if not entirely eradicated. However, the victory also underscored the precariousness of the Union. Both factions remained deeply distrustful of one another, their ideological differences too vast to ignore. For every success, there were reminders of the fragility of their cooperation. As the war continued, the alliance began to take on a more formalized structure. Joint command centers were established, where representatives from both sides could coordinate their efforts. Tau water caste diplomats worked tirelessly to ease tensions, using their considerable skills to navigate the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the Imperium. Meanwhile, human officers who had fought alongside the Tau became influential advocates for continued cooperation, arguing that the alliance was humanity's best hope for survival. Yet, the specter of betrayal loomed large. On several occasions, rogue elements within the Imperium attempted to undermine the alliance, launching unauthorized attacks on Tau forces or sabotaging key operations. Each incident threatened to unravel the fragile trust that had been built, forcing leaders on both sides to redouble their efforts to maintain unity. For the Tau, this often meant making concessions, such as allowing the ecclesiarchy to proselytize among human populations under Tau protection, a compromise that many within the ethereal caste found deeply unpalatable. As the Tyranid War stretched into years, the alliance achieved greater victories but at increasingly higher costs. The hive mind's ability to adapt meant that each new engagement required new strategies and technologies. The Tau's innovation and the Imperium's unyielding resolve proved to be a potent combination, but the strain on both empires was immense. Worlds were sacrificed to buy time, and entire fleets were lost in desperate gambits to halt the Tyranids' advance. Yet, the alliance endured, bound by the shared knowledge that failure meant extinction. The final chapters of the war saw the alliance confront the largest hive fleet yet encountered, a monstrosity that dwarfed even the dreaded hive fleet Leviathan. By this point, the joint forces had honed their cooperation to a razor's edge, their combined might focused on delivering a decisive blow. As fleets clashed in the void and armies battled on the ground, it became clear that this would be a fight to the death, with no quarter given. The alliance between the Imperium and the Tau faced its greatest test as the Hive Mind unleashed its full fury. Hive Fleet Behemoth Ultima, as it was designated, descended upon the forge world of Helios Septimus, a planet critical for both its strategic location and its vast manufactories. The Tau recognized the planet's importance to the Imperium's war machine and committed the full weight of their military forces to its defense. The Imperium, in turn, allowed unprecedented access to the planet's infrastructure, enabling the Tau to deploy their formidable technology alongside the Mechanicus arcane constructs. The defense of Helios Septimus was a testament to what unity could achieve in the face of annihilation. On the surface, Tau battlesuits and human titans strode side by side, obliterating Tyranid bioforms in a thunderous display of firepower. Skitarii and fire warriors formed mixed lines, combining the precision of Tau weaponry with the unyielding determination of the Mechanicus forces. Orbital defenses, bolstered by Tau energy shields, rained destruction upon the Hive Fleet, but the Tyranids' numbers seemed limitless. The sheer scale of the Tyranid swarm was overwhelming. Bio-titans clashed with Imperial warlords and riptides, their monstrous forms tearing through metal and flesh alike. Above the planet, the Void War reached unprecedented levels of ferocity. The Tau aircast sleek ships flew in tight formation with the lumbering vessels of the Imperial Navy, their combined firepower turning hive ships into fiery debris. Yet, for every vessel destroyed, the Hive fleet birthed more, its capacity for regeneration seemingly infinite. Amidst the chaos, the Alliance devised a desperate plan to sever the Hive fleet's central synaptic link. Intelligence gathered from previous battles suggested that the Hive Mind's control relied on a central node hidden within the largest Hive ship, a gargantuan monstrosity that dwarfed even the Tau's Mantas and the Imperium's Gloriana-class battleships. Destroying this ship would destabilize the entire fleet, creating an opening to drive the Tyranids from the system. The strike force assembled for this mission was a microcosm of the Alliance itself. Ultramarines and Tau elites, backed by Mechanica specialists and guided by the psychic acumen of the Imperium's finest navigators. Infiltrating the Hive ship was a suicidal task, but both sides committed their best and brightest, knowing that failure was not an option. Through a combination of Tau stealth technology and the Imperium's warp-based expertise, the strike force breached the Hive ship's defenses, entering the labyrinthine interior of the monstrous vessel. Inside, the horrors of the Tyranids were laid bare. Organic corridors pulsed with alien vitality, and every step brought the strike team closer to the Hive Mind's wrath. The Ultramarines led the charge, their bolters roaring as they carved a path through endless waves of Tyranid defenders. Behind them, Tau crisis suits provided covering fire, their advanced weaponry cutting down larger bioforms with pinpoint accuracy. The Mechanica specialists, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to plant melta charges in key structural points, ensuring that even if the primary mission failed, the Hive ship would not survive the assault. The final confrontation took place in the Hive ship's core, a cavernous chamber dominated by a pulsating mass of alien flesh and psychic energy, the synaptic node. The defenders were the Tyranids' most lethal creations, creatures bred specifically to protect the Hive Mind's heart. The battle was brutal and unrelenting, with casualties mounting on both sides. Space Marines fought with the fury of angels, their chainswords and power fists tearing through Tyranid carapaces, while Tau commanders unleashed experimental weaponry that turned entire swarms to ash. Victory came at a steep cost. As the synaptic node was destroyed, the Hive ship began to collapse, its organic structure imploding under the strain. The strike team barely escaped, their numbers decimated but their mission accomplished. The destruction of the synaptic node sent a psychic shockwave through the Hive fleet, disrupting its cohesion and turning the swarms into mindless beasts. This provided the Allied fleets with the opportunity they needed to annihilate the Tyranid remnants, securing Helios Septimus and delivering the first true victory in the war. The aftermath of the battle saw both the Imperium and the Tau reassess their alliance. For the Imperium, the victory was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it proved that cooperation with the Tau was not only possible but immensely effective. On the other, it exacerbated tensions within the Imperium's political and religious institutions, many of which viewed the alliance as an affront to the Emperor's divine mandate. The Tau, too, faced internal dissent, as some factions argued that prolonged collaboration with the Imperium endangered the purity of the greater good. Despite these challenges, the alliance endured, driven by the recognition that the Tyranids remained an ever-present threat. For the first time in the galaxy's history, humanity and an alien race had fought not as enemies but as partners, united by a shared will to survive. Whether this fragile union would pave the way for lasting peace or simply delay an inevitable return to hostilities remained uncertain. What was clear, however, was that the alliance had bought both the Imperium and the Tau a chance to endure, and perhaps, in the face of an uncaring galaxy, that was victory enough. The war against the Tyranids continued to grind on, each battle testing the limits of the alliance between the Imperium and the Tau. While the victory at Helios Septimus had marked a turning point, it was but one of many clashes that lay ahead. Both sides knew that the Hive Mind would adapt, evolving new strategies and bioforms to counter their combined efforts. The Alliance's task was not only to fight, but to stay one step ahead of an enemy that learned from every engagement. The Imperium's grim resolve was complemented by the Tau's unyielding optimism. For the Tau, the Alliance was not merely a tactical necessity but an opportunity to demonstrate the value of the greater good to their unlikely allies. Ethereal diplomats worked tirelessly to forge deeper ties with Imperial commanders, emphasizing the shared stakes in the conflict. They sought to erode the hostility of the Ecclesiarchy and the Ordo Xenos, though with mixed success. While some within the Imperium came to respect the Tau as allies, others continued to view them as a blasphemous threat to humanity's divine destiny. For the Imperium, pragmatism began to overshadow dogma in many sectors. The Mechanicus, once fiercely protective of its technological secrets, found itself working increasingly closely with the Tau Earth caste. This collaboration led to breakthroughs that neither faction could have achieved alone. Imperial plasma weapons, notoriously prone to overheating, were improved using Tau cooling systems, while Tau battlesuits were upgraded with advanced power sources derived from Mechanicus designs. These hybrid technologies proved devastatingly effective against the Tyranids, allowing the Alliance to hold ground that would otherwise have been lost. The Alliance's growing effectiveness did not go unnoticed by the Hive Mind. Recognizing the unique threat posed by this union, the Tyranids began deploying specialized bioforms designed to exploit the weaknesses of both factions. These included stealth organisms capable of infiltrating Imperial and Tau command structures, as well as monstrous creatures equipped with bioplasma weapons that mirrored the Tau's advanced firepower. The Hive Mind also intensified its psychological warfare, using its synaptic network to amplify the fears and doubts of its enemies. Imperial psychers reported horrifying visions of humanity's extinction, while Tau commanders found themselves grappling with an uncharacteristic sense of despair. Amidst this escalating conflict, the Alliance faced a new challenge, a schism within its own ranks. Rogue Imperial factions, emboldened by the Ecclesiarchy's condemnation of the Alliance, began launching unauthorized attacks on Tau territories, claiming that collaboration with Xenos was a betrayal of the Emperor's will. These actions threatened to unravel the fragile trust between the two empires. The Tau, for their part, faced internal pressure from Fire Caste leaders who questioned the wisdom of aligning with a species as brutal and unpredictable as humanity. To address these divisions, a summit was convened on the neutral world of Jaliner, a barren planet chosen for its strategic unimportance. Representatives from the Imperium and the Tau gathered under heavy guard, their discussions facilitated by water caste diplomats and Imperial envoys. The summit was fraught with tension, as accusations and recriminations were exchanged. Yet, amidst the discord, a sense of shared purpose began to emerge. Both sides recognized that their alliance, however imperfect, was the only thing standing between them and annihilation. The summit produced a series of agreements aimed at strengthening the alliance. Joint command structures were formalized, allowing for better coordination in the field. Protocols were established to prevent rogue elements from jeopardizing operations, and a framework was created for resolving disputes. These measures helped to stabilize the alliance, though they did little to quell the deep-seated mistrust that persisted on both sides. The next major engagement came at the Nexus Expanse, a cluster of systems rich in resources but plagued by unstable warp currents. The Tyranids had targeted the region, seeking to establish a foothold that would allow them to launch attacks deeper into both Imperial and Tau territory. The Alliance mounted a massive counteroffensive, deploying their combined fleets and armies in a bid to halt the Hive Fleet's advance. The battle for the Nexus Expanse was a war of attrition on an unprecedented scale. In the void, Tau warships and Imperial cruisers engaged in coordinated strikes, exploiting their complementary strengths to devastating effect. On the ground, joint forces fought tooth and nail to hold key positions, using a combination of brute force and precision tactics to outmaneuver the Tyranid swarms. The fighting was brutal and unrelenting, with entire regiments and cadres wiped out in the effort to stem the tide. In the midst of the chaos, a new hero emerged, Commander Shadowsun of the Tau, whose strategic brilliance and unshakable resolve became a beacon of hope for the Alliance. Leading from the front, Shadowsun coordinated daring maneuvers that turned the tide of several critical battles, earning the respect of even the most skeptical Imperial commanders. Her partnership with Lord Inquisitor Marcus Thal, a radical member of the Ordo Xenos who had come to see the value of the Alliance, became a symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation.